Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
On first at 9 tonight, this Monday, the 14th of November 2022. Budget 2023. President carries out second reading of Budget 2023 in Parliament today. The new way forward. Government aims to increase revenue to 15% of GDP with plans to achieve a primary surplus of over 2% of GDP. Divided. 5 MPs cross over from the Sri Lanka Pudujana Perumana to the opposition today.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. On your top story for tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, in his capacity as a finance minister, presented Budget 2023 in Parliament today with the aim of creating a long-term, stable economic growth. The budget, which is youth-centric, focused on capital, export and labour markets and the digital economy, and expects to achieve the budget targets through a social market economy.
After
the year of waiting in queues for days and protesting in various occupied places, our sufferings have been eased to some extent, and we have reached an era where our peace of mind is much settled. Inflation could be controlled to some extent due to the measures that we took in the recent past. Similarly, the rupee is strengthening. We expect to sustain these developments. I am confident that by moving along in the same path, we will be able to stabilize the economy within the next year. But we cannot be satisfied with that. We must start a new journey. 75 years after independence, can we be satisfied with the status quo? Where did we go wrong? How did we go wrong? Today our country has several main revenue-generating sectors. One is the plantation economy. Next is the free trade zones, garment industry, tourism and foreign employment. Looking at those after independence, we have been able to create only a few avenues for the country to earn foreign income. Beyond that, why have we not yet been able to create large-scale foreign income-generating sectors? This is something we should think about carefully. Is the long-term development of a country based on popular decisions or the right decisions? Reminiscing the 1950s, Lee Kuan Yew once mentioned the following: "In Singapore, I followed the hard but right path. Sri Lanka's Bandaranaike followed the popular path. There is no future for the country by continuing on this popular path. There is no prosperity for the country by giving concessions while being in debt to others. So let's get out of this situation now. Let's change our thinking patterns. Let's think anew. Let's create innovative approaches to move the country forward." In 1977, the J.R. Jayawardena government took a positive step to change the economic perspective that existed until then. Instead of the failed closed economy, a different path was chosen. Instead of giving concessions, he created an economy that gave opportunities. Concepts like providing free rice were completely disregarded. Instead, new opportunities were created to move forward with one's abilities. The economy opened up. The country woke up. Poverty decreased. The middle class expanded. But the economic base created in 1977 could not be advanced rapidly. Due to external factors such as civil conflict, that journey was hampered. For 75 years after independence, we have been speaking about protecting national resources. They are campaigning for the preservation of national resources and also fighting for it. But have we really protected our real national wealth? Has a future been created for national resources? The real national wealth of our country is the youth. Can we be satisfied with the work we have done so far in order to create educational, social and economic opportunities for the youth? If we have done a proper role to protecting that youth, why are they queuing up to leave the country? Many people think that national resources are physical things, like the Trincomalee oil tanks. Thinking like that, they don't care for them. Even when they're decaying, they just keep them. These young people hope for a better day, hope for a good country, a new approach, a new program that goes beyond traditional political methods such as agitation, struggles and strikes. When Sri Lanka was a low-income country, the basic necessities of life enjoyed by the people were very low. But after being elevated to a middle-income economy, standards of living also naturally rose. This is the normal situation. It's the same even at home. As the household income level rises, the standard of living rises. In preparing the new economic base, we should focus on the lifestyles that the society is familiar with. A new journey must be started so that these lifestyles do not fall to a lower level again. Especially today's youth who deal with the world on a technological basis expect their lifestyles to rise day by day. Therefore, it is necessary to create a way of life that stimulates lifestyles that rise day by day through the new economic base. Means of livelihood that we should be creating is not that suit the current level of per capita income. A way to raise per capita income to match the lifestyles that young people aspire to. In this system, we focus on taking care of poor and vulnerable groups. It is necessary to examine whether all sections of society are receiving equitable benefits through health services and free education that is currently provided, as well as other welfare programs. And these services should be made more efficient. Maximum benefits should be obtained from the resources spent for this purpose. In this new economy, we focus on three main things: an economic-oriented competitive economy, an environmentally friendly green and blue economy, and a digital economy. Creating such a new economic foundation is a challenging task. Such a new economy cannot be created merely by making changes in the tax system. We expect to achieve a social market economy or social security open economy through this. We expect high economic growth of 7 to 8%, and we also look at increasing international trade as a percentage of GDP by more than 100%. Annual growth of $3 billion from new exports from 2023 to 2032 is also expected through this new plan. Foreign direct investments of more than $3 billion in the next 10 years, creating an internationally competitive workforce with high skills in the next 10 years is also something we are looking forward to.
ඉදිරි දස වසර තුලදී නිර්මාණය කර ගැනීම.
The budget 2023 expects to remove the cess levy phase by phase, the ports and airport development levy, and introducing key revisions to the customs import duty, fees and charges levied by the Department of Immigration and Immigration Services are expected and proposed to be increased by the year 2023. Presenting the 2023 budget to the Parliament today, President Ranil Wickremesinghe announced new key reforms to various sectors of the economy. The sectors included international trade and investment, state-owned enterprises, food security and budgetary control, in addition to proposals for revisions in tax and tax revenue generation. The President elaborated on the macro-fiscal framework which will stabilize the ailing economy. Accordingly, by 2025, government revenue is expected to be increased to around 15% of GDP, and a primary surplus of more than 2% of GDP is to be achieved. The government also aims to reduce public sector debt from around 110% of GDP as at end 2021 to no more than 100% of GDP in the medium term. Inflation is to be brought to a mid-single digit level in the medium term, while interest rates are also expected to reach a moderate level gradually. Once macroeconomic confidence is re-established and foreign exchange reserves are replenished through foreign financing, the adverse pressure on the exchange rate is also expected to abate. With the implementation of a series of growth-enhancing structural reforms, medium-term economic growth is expected to be 5% with hopes of acceleration thereafter. In a bid to attract more foreign investments for the foreign exchange-starved economy, the establishment of new economic zones in the Western Province, Northwestern Province, Hambantota and Trincomalee is proposed. 300 million rupees will be allocated for this purpose, which will also encompass the setting up of a necessary infrastructure conducive for investments. Investments and industrial zones currently operating under various government agencies will come under the new economic zone program, for which a new law will be enacted soon. Policy measures will focus on enhancing Sri Lanka's ability to compete in global markets through innovation, efficiency and quality. Sri Lanka will also resume trade negotiations with Thailand, which along with the FTA with Singapore sets the stepping stones for Sri Lanka to engage in dynamic regional trading arrangements such as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Highlighting the success of the QR system in the petroleum distribution by the Ministry of Power and Energy, the benefits of using digital technology in various economic activities will be explored. Thereby, a committee involving experts and relevant officials in the industry will be appointed to examine and report to the Cabinet of Ministers on the requirements for the advancement of the digital technology industry, including required policy environment, laws, institutional support and facilities. In measures of ensuring food security, A new program will be initiated by the National Food Security and Nutrition Unit, where the National Food Security Program will be planned using agricultural and livestock product information of household units collected via an online process. On the much anticipated tax policy measures, steps are to be taken gradually to increase the state revenue in the next few years. In order to achieve that end, the proposals were made to establish a Presidential Commission on Taxation to study, make recommendations on the functioning, coordination and changes to be made in the tax structure, the institutions, procedures and other important areas of tax collection. While highlighting the previous revenue proposals made during the presentation of the interim budget earlier this year, proposals were made to eliminate the cess levy on a phased basis in 3 years from the 1st of January 2023 for local industries including agriculture. Furthermore, revision of the current rates of customs import duty from 0%, 10% and 15% to 0%, 15% and 20% were also introduced with the hope of accommodating the more proposed phasing out of para-tariffs and levies effective from the 1st of January 2023 were also proposed. The Ports and Airports Development Levy was suggested to be phased out completely in 5 years. Subsequent to the proposals on generating tax revenue, the importance of non-tax revenue in the fiscal consolidation process was highlighted, proposing to increase fees and charges by 20% with effect from 2023. However, fees and charges that have already been increased in the years of 2020, 2021 and 2022 will be revised with this proposal. Further, proposals were made to increase fees levied by the Department of Immigration and Immigration on passports, visas and other charges. The budget presentation featured key revelations on the widely spoken about SOE reforms as well. Accordingly, measures will be taken initially to restructure Sri Lankan Airlines, Sri Lankan Telecom, Colombo Hilton, Water's Edge and Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation along with its subsidiaries. The proceeds accumulated during the restructuring process will be used to strengthen foreign exchange reserves of the country and to strengthen the rupee. On a strategic plan to better utilize the assets of SOEs, a proposal was made to line up businesses of similar nature by way of backward, forward or horizontal integration. The integration would be a key strategic intervention made by the government with the intention of achieving economies of scale and other benefits. On budgetary control, it was revealed that there are several shortcomings with regard to the implementation of budget proposals. To address this issue, a presidential task force to carry out monitoring functions to expedite implementation of all budget proposals was also proposed. In the meantime, a proposal was also made to allocate 100 million rupees for the establishment of a National Productivity Commission as an independent institution to advise the government on microeconomic policies related to industries, commerce and trade. The operations of the National Productivity Secretariat will also be incorporated into the proposed commission. Following the second reading of the budget, MPs of the ruling faction called on all members of the parliament to support Budget 2023 to overcome the crisis. State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siamala stated that the budget aims to provide relief to 70% of families that rely on the support of the government to thrive, whilst also strengthening the economy by the end of 2023. However, independent parliamentarian Udaya Gammanpilla called the budget a failure, saying that it focuses on raising government debt burden through the establishment of new departments and corporations.
මේ රටේ ඉදිරිපත් කරපු දුෂ්කරතම අයවැය. මේ රටේ ඉන්න පවුල් ප්‍රමාණයෙන් 70%ක් උදව් ඉල්ලන ජීවත් වෙනවා. ඔවුන් කොහොමද ජීවත් කරවන්නේ? ඒ වගේ මාර්ගය කොහොමද පවත්වාගෙන යන්නේ සහ 2023 අවසන් වෙනකොට නැවතත් ශක්තිමත් ආර්ථිකයක් බවට ක්‍රමයෙන් කොහොමද පත් වෙන්නේ කියන කාරණාත් එක්ක තමයි මේ අයවැය ලේඛනය සැලසුම් කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
දීර්ඝකාලීන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තමයි ඔහු ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. රටක් හැටියට මේක අභියෝගයක්. ඒ අභියෝගය ජය ගන්න නම් මම හිතනවා මේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ දීර්ඝකාලීන වැඩපිළිවෙලට එකතු විය යුතුයි කියන එකයි
On principle, what he has presented in Parliament, many of us, when we were in the United National Party, those are the principles that we were talking about, that we want to do when we come into power. But however, he has failed to indicate the numbers, the data. So I think as a opposition, we must also give our proposals for a budget because the country has fallen, the country has declared a state of bankruptcy. So in this scenario, we must not just look at party politics, we must look at the country's future, and for the sake of the future of the country, we must also, as a responsible opposition, give our proposals and see how the government is going to implement them. And if they are good proposals, I think as a country and for the country's future and the sake of the country's future, we must support it.
There is nothing much there clear in the budget, but still we have to expect this kind of a budget now because of the situation, the economic situation. I don't think that we don't expect it, but still it could have been better.
Ultimately, we couldn't see any improvement or good news from the budget.
තවත් රුපියල් බිලියන 5000කින් ණය වැඩි කිරීමේ යෝජනාවක් තමයි මේ අයවැයේ තියෙන්නේ. අලුත් සංස්ථා ව්‍යවස්ථාපිත ආයතන සහ දෙපාර්තමේන්තු 10කට වැඩි සංඛ්‍යාවක් අලුතෙන් බිහි කිරීමට මේ අයවැයේ යෝජනා කරමින් රාජ්‍ය වියදම බරපතල ලෙස ඉහළ දැමීමට උත්සාහ කරලා තියෙනවා. ඇත්තටම මේ රටේ ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වුණ සහන කිසිවක් ලබා දීලා නැති අයවැයක් ඉදිරි අවුරුද්දේ කොහොමද ජීවත් වෙන්නේ කියන එක තමයි කල්පනා කර හිටියේ බල හිටියේ යම් සහනයක් ලැබෙයි කියලා. කිසිදු සහනයක් රාජ්‍ය සේවකයන්ට හෝ පෞද්ගලිකාංශයට භූ ජනතාවට ලබා දීලා නැහැ.
බදු මේ වසරට සාපේක්ෂව ලබන වසරේ ට්‍රිලියන 1.5ක විතර බදු ප්‍රමාණයක් අපේක්ෂා කරනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ රටේ ජනතාව මත තවත් විශාල ලෙස පීඩාව එල්ල කිරීමක් තමයි මෙම අයවැය ලේඛනයෙන් සිදුවන්නේ. ඉතින් අපි දන්නවා රක්ෂණ සංස්ථා ලාභ ලබනවා. ටෙලිකොම් ලාභ ලබනවා. වෝටර් එක්ස්චේන්ජ් ලාභ ලබනවා. දැන් ලාභ ලබන ආයතන විකුණා විදේශ සත්‍යිත සර කර ගැනීම තමයි ඔහුගේ දෙවැනි අපේක්ෂාව.
It's very clear that this budget has not given any opportunity for the fishermen or neither the agriculture sector, any relief for the industries of tourism. So it's pretty clear that this budget is not a supportive budget.
රැකියා අහිමි වුණු තරුණ පරපුර වෙනුවෙන් මොකක්ද වැඩපිළිවෙල? අපි දකින්නේ මේ අයවැය මානුෂීය අයවැයක් හැටියට.
අයවැයදී හොඳයි දී. වෙන මොනවා කියන්නේ? අසීරු කාරණයක් නේ. ඒ වැඩේ සාර්ථකව කරයි කියලා විශ්වාස කරන්නේ.
Now stay with us on First at 9 to find out which MPs of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna crossed over to the opposition today amidst the budget reading after this short commercial break.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, 5 MPs who contested from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna had decided to function independently in Parliament early this year, joined the Samagijana Balavegia-led alliance in the opposition today.
5 parliamentarians representing an independent group of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, including Anura Priyadarshana Yapa, Chandima Virakodi, Sudarshani Fernando Pulle, Jayaratna Herath and Priyankara Jayaratna joined the opposition Samagijana Balavegia-led alliance today.
එය සුබ පෙරනිමිත්තක් හැටියට අපි හඳුන්වන්න කැමතියි. මේ වැඩපිළිවෙලට චන්ද්‍රිකා බණ්ඩාරනායක මහත්මිය පැතිණියගේ පූර්ණ සහයෝගය සහ ආශිර්වාදය මේ කර්තව්‍ය සිද්ධ කරනවා. එකම රටේ එකම පුරවැසියන් හැටියට යන ප්‍රතිපත්තිය තුළ අපි අද මේ ඒකාබද්ධ වීම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. එතෙන් පටන් අපි ඉදිරියට එකට වැඩ කටයුතු කරන්නට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
අනාගතයක් අවශ්‍යයි. දේශපාලන මුලමතේ දරුවා අපි අනාගතය සාක්ෂාත් කරලා දීම දේශපාලන පක්ෂයේ නැත්නම් එකමුතුක වගකීම.
The former MP Hirunika Premachandra and 8 others have been arrested by the police while protesting in front of the President's house in Colombo Fort today. According to the police headquarters, they have been taken into custody by the Fort Police. They have been arrested for allegedly attempting to forcibly enter the premises of the President's house during this protest. The arrested protesters include 5 females, including Hirunika Premachandra and 4 other men. Now, the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption says it has observed and received at least 1,800 complaints in the first 10 months of this year. According to a spokesperson of the Bribery Commission, 620 complaints out of the 1,861 complaints received were pertaining to incidents of bribery and corruption. In addition, as many as 64 complaints received by the Commission were concerning assets-related incidents of irregularities. The Commission stated that at least 50 raids were conducted based on these complaints. Reportedly, reports have been called at the institutional level to investigate 72 of these complaints received by the Bribery Commission. Meanwhile, 328 complaints have been directed to other institutions for onward investigations. The Bribery Commission spokesperson further stated that it has called off the investigations on 719 complaints that did not fall under the provisions of the Bribery Act. In a tweet today, the Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said that the Cabinet of Ministers has approved to cancel the spot and term tenders for procurement of coal on the recommendation of the Technical and Procurement Committees. Both were cancelled as none of the bidders have met the qualification criteria and compelled the tender guidelines. According to the Minister, approval was given to the Procurement Committee to call for proposals from prospective suppliers and government-to-government proposals on a long-term credit basis. Requirements for the months of November and December will be fulfilled by advancing the last year's term tender coal supplies. Welcome back. Now, in your business news, the Board of Investment, together with the Department of Immigration and Emigration and the Ministry of Defence, recently launched the long-term residence visa scheme for condominium property holders in the country, with the intention of enticing the inflow of more foreign reserves. Under the new visa scheme, the condominium property purchasing individuals and companies will be granted a long-term residence visa, considering the investments remitted and the value of purchasing the property. This scheme will be targeted to promote the selling of condominium apartments to foreign nationals who wish to live in Sri Lanka. Accordingly, individuals who invest $200,000 in an urban area condominium are eligible for a 10-year long-term visa scheme, while those who invest $150,000 in the urban area condominium are eligible for a 5-year visa scheme. Further, investors who invest $75,000 in suburban area condominiums are eligible for 5-year visa schemes as well. The Sri Lankan shares closed on Monday, snapping at 3 straight sessions of gains as President Ranil Wickremesinghe announced 2023 budget aimed at clinching an IMF deal. At the close of the trade, the all-share price index fell 0.66% to 8,363.29, weighed down by losses in industrial and financial stocks. The index, which closed 1.16% higher on Friday, shed 0.8% last week. Trading volume on the CSE all-share price index rose to 43.5 million shares from about 36.6 million in the previous session. Meanwhile, the market's turnover was 941.1 million Sri Lankan shares, or $2.59 million, compared with 862 million rupees in the previous session. Foreign investors were net sellers in the equity market, offloading stocks worth 62.8 million rupees of shares, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 901.8 million rupees. Now let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Now, the International Monetary Fund's prospects for the world's economy are more pessimistic than what it forecast last month, as downside risks from the effects of Russia's war and persistent inflation continue to materialize. Issuing a report titled G20 Report on Strong, Sustainable, Balanced and Inclusive Growth, the International Monetary Fund said yesterday that the global economic outlook is even gloomier than projected last month, citing a steady worsening in purchasing managers' surveys in recent months.
The IMF's G20 report on strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth blamed the darker outlook on tightening monetary policy triggered by persistently high and broad-based inflation, weak growth momentum in China and ongoing supply disruptions and food security caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In the report, the IMF said continued fiscal and monetary tightening is likely needed in many countries to bring down inflation and address debt vulnerabilities, and it expects further policy tightening in many G20 economies in the months ahead. In this context, the IMF said recent purchasing manager indices that gauge manufacturing and services activity signaled weaknesses in most G20 major economies, with economic activity set to contract while inflation remained stubbornly high. Further, the IMF noted in the report that as prices of many food staples touched record highs in 2022 amid supply shortages for global food commodities as well as fertilizers, food insecurity has risen significantly, in particular for the poorest people across the globe. It further added that a worsening energy crisis in Europe would severely harm growth and raise inflation, while prolonged high inflation could prompt larger than anticipated policy interest hikes and further tightening of global financial conditions. The report went on to say that increasingly severe weather events would also harm growth across the globe.
Now, oil prices today dragged down by a firmer US dollar while surging coronavirus cases in China dashed hopes of a swift reopening of the economy for the world's biggest crude importer. Meanwhile, the prospect of even tighter supply continued to put a floor under prices after OPEC Plus agreed to out production by 2 million barrels per day in November.
Brent crude futures were down by $1 to $94.98 a barrel after gaining 1.1% on Friday, which is a dramatic reversal from their daily highs of $97 per barrel. Meanwhile, US West Texas Intermediate crude was also down by $1.11 to $87.85 after advancing 2.9% on Friday. Commodities prices rallied on Friday after China's National Health Commission adjusted its COVID prevention and control measures to shorten quarantine times for close contacts of cases and inbound travelers. But COVID-19 cases climbed in China over the weekend, with Beijing and other big cities reporting record infections today. China's demand for oil from top exporter Saudi Arabia also remained weak, with several refiners having asked to lift less crude in December. Meanwhile, the prospect of even tighter supply continued to put a floor under prices after OPEC Plus agreed to cut production by 2 million barrels per day in November. At the same time, the European Union ban on Russian oil is set to take effect in the month of December.
Now, a liberal lawyer and former data privacy commissioner backed by Slovenia's centre-left government has been elected as the country's first female president after beating a conservative rival in a runoff vote yesterday. The new president of Slovenia, an EU and NATO member state, who is also an influential lawyer and a former journalist, will replace Borut Pahor, who has been in active politics for 30 years.
According to preliminary results, Nataša Pirc-Musar won the second round of Slovenia's presidential election yesterday and will become its first female head of state. Nataša Pirc-Musar is a journalist and an influential lawyer who ran as an independent with the backing of Slovenia's centre-left government. She defeated former Foreign Minister Ance Logar, who is a veteran of conservative politics. According to data issued by the Election Commission, Pirc-Musar won almost 54% of the vote, ahead of Mr. Logar, who just got over 46% votes in the runoff. The Commission added that the turnout among the population of around 2 million was 49.9%. Speaking to reporters after claiming victory, Pirc-Musar said that she will do her best to be a true president for all and to work for fundamental and constitutional human and democratic rights and democracy. The new president of Slovenia, an EU and NATO member state, will replace Borut Pahor, who had been active in politics for almost 30 years. Pirc-Musar has indicated that she would conduct herself differently to the outgoing president, who rarely intervened on domestic political issues during his 2 5-year terms in office.
And that concludes tonight's edition of First at 9. Join us again tomorrow at the same time for the very latest news. Until then, visit our website www.AdaDerana.lk for more news. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news
News and information you can trust 24 hours a day. Visit AdaDerana.com.